I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
Welcome to Build an Iconic Life podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whitehead, and this podcast is dedicated to help you build a life with zero regrets by focusing on how you have everything you need to stand up, stand out, and live life on your terms. Let's dive right in.
So I choose to be grateful. And I think 5 years ago version of me would see my current situation and freak out terribly. This year's version of me would be like, okay, there's 100 things going on in my life. And if only one or two of them are wrong, I'm not going to let that control my whole life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people invest a lot of time wishing they were where they weren't for a lot of different reasons. Either they're seeing the media, movies and television show them lifestyles of the rich and famous, or fantasy famous. There's the social media where everybody's showing their highlight reels. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. I mean, I want to see it because I'm a doer.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking, and I haven't had a chance this morning yet, but on the way into the office, I was listening to, I told you, Sir Richard Branson.
Yeah.
And I was thinking there are observers of life and there are doers of life. And I remember being 20 years old, Brian, and thinking that I was depressed. And the truth was I was just lazy and bored. And when I started doing anything, I started to get focused on the thing that I was doing, and I started to make it a game, or I started to find the challenge in it. And, here we are. Now I'm 50. It's 30 years later, and my life has definitely been colorful.
Yeah.
I can't say compared to who it's successful, but I can definitely say I've done a lot of different things. And sometimes it's kind of like Michael Singer wrote a book, and I can't remember the name of it. Hold on one second. I'll tell you. I hate to quote people and then not remember the book. But anyway, it's called The Surrender Experiment. And the premise of the book, not to spoil it for anybody that's listening, because we're recording right now, by the way, but the idea is he just followed his nose. And he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
And he ended up having, a company in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and ended up getting sued for it. And instead of trying to manipulate and gameplay and all this stuff, he just, okay, I'll trust the lawyers. I'll trust the court system. It's going to be what it's going to be, and it's going to be okay. And I think about the consternation that I've had in my life. It's trying to force a square peg in a round hole. It's AKA forcing a result. And what I noticed as I got older is that I would run around in circles. And that's literally what it was. It didn't feel like circles, but I would run around in circles, waste all of my energy to get to the same result that was going to naturally occur anyway. And I used a lot less strategic thinking and a lot more energy, mainly not to be bored.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I realized that energy reserves are different than they were when I was 20. And so maybe it's better to sit back a little bit and just allow something to come into fruition. And the more that I'm doing that, the more these ideas pop up in my head. And the ones that really, really resonate with me, then I put full energy into. And lo and behold, if I trust the process, if I stay in gratitude, everything that you and I've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
If I do those things, what I notice is that God comes and blesses me at the right place at the right time. And the lessons are everything that I'm learning to be prepared for the opportunity that's going to show up anyway.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think, and being ready for the blessing, and just, in prayer, just asking, or saying, I'm just looking forward to whatever blessings you have in store for me today, creates an expectant heart, which is really, really important too. Because you will find what you're looking for. If you are expecting wonderful and awesome things to happen, you will look for those things and you'll find them. If you're expecting things to be really awful, that's what you will find. And no wonder you're miserable.
And I think that I've done this for a lot of years, but I think there's also an opportunity for us to train our unconscious minds, because that's the voice that's really in our heads that sometimes I don't think we're listening to. And
Mhm.
it's not because we don't want to, it's because it's buried. It's there. It's called the unconscious mind for a reason. But
Mhm.
you have the ability to change that narrative if you want to.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people don't do it because it's not a tangible thing.
Right.
And then other people look at it and they go, oh, that's woo woo and airy fairy and whatnot. But literally in the last 2 years, science is starting to prove all of this stuff at a much, much higher level. And I nerd out on it. I mean, they even talk about it in the quantum physics realm and things like that. But there is an opportunity for people to dream dreams that they didn't even know they could dream and then move toward realizing them. And what my experience has been when I look back, hindsight 2020, right? But when I look back, I'm grateful for my life because of the foundation that I've been building. Because that's what it feels like, even at 50, is that I'm just
Mhm.
still at the foundation. I don't have the castle put together. And the castle might not ever be put together. I might just be building a foundation for different generations.
For
But
sure.
I'm proud that it's a foundation.
Yeah.
I'm proud that it's something that's strong. And that's what I've noticed you doing. I mean, how long now? 15 years you've been on the radio?
12 and a half.
12 and a half years you've been on the radio.
Yeah.
You've interviewed well over 500 people,
Yep.
some of the top names in the world,
Mhm.
all because you had an idea. It almost seemed like maybe you had read Napoleon Hill, um, and then said, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
And you started reporting instead of claiming that you're some victor. I mean, and you're highly accomplished. You have a master's degree. You've taught in college. You've
Mhm.
written. How many books have you written now? 6 or 8?
This is number 10.
10. You've written 10 books,
Yep.
and you decided to start a radio show,
Mhm.
kept with it, which
Mhm.
very few people do.
Right.
Then you created a magazine
Mhm.
for entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
Then you relabeled yourself, rebranded yourself as Brian Wright International.
Yeah.
Um, and you literally help entrepreneurs get their message out there
Mhm.
so that they can get more leads, have more conversions, increase. And this is after talking to so many, just like Napoleon Hill,
Yeah.
talking to so many successful people. And I believe you probably started to see common themes in conversations after a while, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I think the most successful people in the world have an unshakable belief in who they are and what they want. They have their major definite purpose and they have a burning hot white desire to make that happen. I always ask people, what do you think is your rock bottom moment? Usually people will say which one, because there's more than one, but they always pick themselves up. It's like that Chinese proverb, get knocked down 7 times, get up 8.
Yeah.
So you get up, but here's the other thing too, to use a boxing analogy, when you get knocked down, you only have until the count of 10 to get back up. So you can't just sit and wallow in it forever. You must make a decision to get back up or you will lose the fight because you'll lose the will to start again.
That's the truth.
Mhm.
I have a client right now. He's just started with me. He's never done coaching before. He still has a W-2, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And in our onboarding call, I asked him, what do you want out of this experience with me? And he quite literally said, I don't know. I don't
That's
know what I
okay.
want. And I told him, well, I can't really help you
Yeah.
until you tell me what it is you want. I mean, I've got a huge network. I can help you in business. I can help you in your personal life, spiritual, all this different kind of stuff. But what do you want to focus on? So what I asked him to do was to go do an exercise.
Mhm.
And it's been over 2 weeks, so I know it's hard on him. I had him
Yeah.
read a book, a nonfiction book,
Yeah.
which he hasn't done really much. And then I
Mhm.
also asked him to sit down and write down what he wants. And I said,
Mhm.
what's going to happen is after about 10 or 20 minutes, you think you're going to be done.
Mhm.
But at that 20-minute mark is actually when you think you're done, is when you're actually beginning, because I want you to keep writing until you either emote or the hair stands up on your arms. But I have a question for you.
Mhm.
What would you say to someone who is interested? I mean, the guy's interested. He's paying me money,
Mhm.
right? He's happy. He's in a group calls. He's in one-to-one calls. He's doing activities. But what would you say to someone that has not yet found their major definite purpose and doesn't know what they want yet? What is that? what would you do to help them out based upon all of the people that you've talked to that are highly successful?
I would say don't be afraid of trying things. I think people don't take any action at all because they don't know where to start. I would say start doing something. Read something. I mean, this is something that you encouraged me to do way back in the day, and you basically said you're going to be an empty vessel unless you start reading and start doing something. And when I started my radio show, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to happen because of it. I just knew that I wanted to interview amazing people who I looked up to. Now, to get to those people, I had to interview a lot of other people along the way who were amazing in their own right. But then I finally started getting some traction, and sometimes the market tells you what it wants. When two or more people ask me, "Do you do such and such?" and my answer is no, then I start thinking, "Oh, I wonder if there's a way I can do this or direct someone to other people that do, or if there's a way to collaborate with people to make this happen." Because honestly, for me, doing the magazine was born out of the idea that I just had so much content that I hadn't repurposed ever. I create an episode of my radio show, I post it a few times, and then what? It just sits there. No, that's when I started learning to repurpose content. And then I started repurposing some snippets from my show on social media. I've got my assistant doing Facebook reels for me now that I post reels on Facebook and Instagram, I guess I should say. But I'll take ideas from my show and I'll make a post about it. I might write a magazine article about something that a guest talked about. Or if I do a solo show, I'll have a couple of different articles at least that I could generate based on that hour of content that I created on my radio show. And I've done that before. Sometimes what I would say is just start free talking about some topic and go for 10 or 15 minutes and then stop and get it transcribed and see if there's something that you can use. But for someone who has no idea what to do, and I know I'm rambling here, but one of the things that I learned as a giant clue was, what did I enjoy doing as a kid?
Okay.
What skills did I enjoy using? Now, I always wanted to be a teacher and a writer, and I became those things. I always thought that being on the radio would be cool, and I'm doing all the things that I really wanted to do as a kid. But I would write stories in study hall when I was done with my homework in 4th grade. When I was in church with my parents, if I got too fidgety, mom would hand me a notebook. Now, most kids would draw and doodle. I would write. So I was the oddball right from the start. And so sometimes the things or the skills that you used as a kid can be clues. And I say skills and not necessarily activities because, I mean, I've been out of high school for, this will be 40 years this year. My 40-year reunion is coming up this year. The world is a lot different now. There are many, many jobs in many, many industries that did not exist when I graduated from high school. And I would say to those of you who are still young enough, there will be jobs in industries 40 years from now that are not invented yet. But there are skills that transfer across any industry. If you can read and write well, effectively, if you can sell, if you can persuade, if you can market, if you can communicate, that's the most important one. If you could do any or all of those things really, really well, you will never, ever have something to do, not have something to do.
One of the things that, and by the way, I appreciate that. In fact, I asked the question somewhat selfishly, because usually people hire me when they're already in the water with an oar.
Yeah.
And they're paddling somewhere. And I want to be able to give him ideas. But as you were talking about it, I was thinking personally, it's like, you're right. That's how I got into remodeling. Like, I like breaking things. Like, as a 5 or 6 year old, I was kind of an only kid until I was 10, right? I would be in the basement and literally take my entire bicycle apart. I have no idea why. I'd put it back together and there would be bolts that, the bike was together and it worked, but I still had bolts left over. Like, I don't know. But I've been doing that my whole life in different ways. I deconstruct things and then put them back together so that and that's how I understand how something works. It's actually the only way. But then I would marvel at people that could read manuals or look at something and they could understand just from how the thing was ticking, the mechanics that were going on with it. But I think that's a beautiful thing, is think about what brought you joy as a child that you naturally did and it became a skill.
Yeah.
Just because you practiced it long enough.
Yeah. And I'm a visual learner. If you gave me a manual and said, put this together, I would scream. No way. But let me watch you do it a couple times. I could probably do it myself after that.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting is, I'm gonna take a stab at it. 5 to 7 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
the written word was way more powerful than the spoken word.
Mm-hmm.
The visual acting was second, and then audio was third. But the onset of all of this podcasting is audio is now getting a lot stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to something and it clicked in. We've only been writing that we are aware of for a few thousand years.
Mm-hmm.
We've been telling stories we don't even know how long.
Right.
Do you know DeGrasse, the scientist?
Uh-huh.
My dad tagged a post with him in it. And it was talking about the pyramids.
Yeah.
And that one of them is like less than an eighth of an inch off of perfection.
Mm.
There are no tombs and mummies inside of those things. Each of these boulders weighs like 50 tons or something that they stacked on top of one another. And there is zero evidence. Like, think of the millions of trees in the forest that would be debris. There's no evidence that these trees were there or used to roll, blah, blah, blah. And what he was getting at is that and he doesn't believe that aliens are the ones that created. He also says none of the hieroglyphics ever show the Egyptians creating the pyramids.
Yeah.
So what he believes is that there's ancient technology that we've just lost.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I thought that was an interesting perspective. And for my dad to even tag that, even more interesting, because I respect his opinion. He looks at things from a really pragmatic viewpoint. And I think DeGrasse is pretty cool too. If nobody's ever listened to him, I think you should, just because he's a highly educated dude.
Yeah.
But it makes me think about how long we've been telling stories and how much these neurological pathways we have in our brains are set to learn from this modality. And I love the fact that you do all of the above to help people get their message out. Well, you do the radio show.
Mm-hmm.
You're jumping on podcasts like this. You've gone to seminars where you are having pictures taken of amazing people. The visual is there. You write, which is, I believe, visual. All to leave clues for people. And I'm curious, what is your definite major purpose in creating this foundation that you're building?
I want to create as much impact as I can. I want people to realize the best version of themselves. I want to empower people to do what maybe they don't even know they can do.
Tell me why that resonates with you so hard. What about your story? Because it must come from something that you felt.
I want people to feel heard, because I don't necessarily think that I've always felt heard. And it's interesting too, because I mean, when you're getting started in your career, no one's going to invite you to speak on their stage or even to be on their podcast. There has to be something underneath it that convinces people that you would be a worthy risk. And so I've also heard it said that if you're not being invited on other people's stages, you just create your own. So that's what I did. I do my own radio show hosted on the TogiNet radio network called Success Profiles Radio. I have Ultimate Achievers magazine, which I publish. I help people write their books. I publish magazines for other people that are custom for them. So I'm helping people get heard. And one of my core values is legacy, which probably means something a little different to me than it does to most people. But for me, legacy means leaving people in a better place than you found them.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, I want to grab something real quick. I will be right back.
Okay.
So I have a handy dandy example.
Yeah, you do.
Of Success Profiles magazine. This is a feature that Brian did with me, and I'm really grateful for it. And I have multiple copies because he sent them to me.
Yep.
how to build a multi-million-dollar business.
I gave them to you in person. We met up in Dallas.
Yes. And you
I
do
surprised
this.
you. You didn't know I was doing this. That gave me a
No.
lot of joy, by the way.
No. Well, it's just the kind of guy you are.
Yeah.
You're one hell of a go-giver, man. And that is a legacy that I know. I feel like I'm a go-giver, but when I'm around other people that are doing it, it tells me that because you don't always get what you give.
No.
At least not in the moment.
Not in the moment. And sometimes, and I think people need to grab onto this too, because most people think that you're going to receive in the same way that you gave. That is almost never true. You will receive in ways that are very different from the way you gave. Some people think if you give money, you'll get money back. It might or might not happen. Sometimes the blessings that you receive in return will far exceed the thing that you gave, because God's an infinite God. We certainly are nowhere near infinite. So isn't God able to give far more than we can imagine? Of course. And he says he will. So give. You can't outgive God. You just can't. So just get started doing that. I mean, I've had people tell me in my life, and you're probably one of them, when you feel like you are at your wit's end, just start giving. Give from what you can, even if you don't think it's a lot, because someone else might really appreciate it. And the one kind thing that you do or say to somebody might be the only glimpse of God they get all day long. So do it.
Yeah. And a lot of times I know it's tough for all of us. We all magnetize towards people that are winning and people that exude this amazing energy because it's really, really, it feels amazing. But remember that person in the corner that might have a dark cloud over them, that it's worth having a conversation with them, because that's the person that really needs the message, not the one that's winning.
Right.
And that to me was part of understanding the Great Commission and all the parables that are in the Bible that, for the faith that you and I both believe in. It's like this dude came and loved on the unlovable people because they deserved that love. They needed that love. And what I found is similar to you. If I'm in a really bad place mentally or emotionally, if I start loving on other people, it comes back. And I remember you and I talking about this years ago. I think I was in Mexico. I think it was Mexico.
Yeah.
You and I did I can't remember what station that was on. We were experimenting with some podcasting / venue, but we did 100 gratitudes.
Yeah. 100 successes. Yeah.
100 successes.
Yeah.
And
that was probably 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah.
And, I remember it was around 65 that it started getting really tough.
Yes.
And I know now when I'm feeling the worst is when I need to practice that the most.
Yeah.
Because that's the same behavior that you're talking about. If you don't get off your ass and go do something, you only have to the count of 10. And that's metaphorical in your life. But there is a time at which if you don't use it, you lose it. And that idea goes to someone else.
Yeah. And something else I'll also add to that. There are really good reasons why you should get testimonials from people who have worked with you that have had a successful experience, whether they've been on your radio show, your podcast, or whether they're a client that you did work for. Yes, it's great for social proof, but sometimes when I'm feeling just out of it or in a funk, I will go back and read, watch, and listen to all of my testimonials, because if they all think I'm amazing, then it must be true. And now I'm ready to go again.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. I love it when, and I know this happens to you as well. I love it when I wake up and I'll go to my, instant messaging on different platforms and people are thanking me for the message, or they're telling me a story of how they were somewhere and maybe a little something that I said, but knowing that I'm doing something to help somebody else unknowingly, bro, just putting it out there. I'm just basically, when I'm putting messages out, I used to do it from a position of, I want to show you I'm the authority so that you will buy my stuff. And it was a little bit of imposter syndrome. Now I just speak what's on my mind and on my heart.
Yeah.
And when other people resonate with that and then come back and tell me how it worked for them, and then they come back and tell me how they passed it along to someone else, it's like, that's what makes me wicked happy, dude.
Right. Exactly. And something else I do, and I've done this for you and with you many times, I mean, one of my goals is to have an inspiring conversation with someone every single day. And so what I'll do, I'll just message or text someone and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I love you. I
Yep.
appreciate you. I'm very proud of you. And if I can think of a specific reason why, I'll tell them, because sometimes people say, why? It's like, my gosh, don't take something good, make it cynical. Okay, I'm proud of you because, okay.
Dude, you're one of the very best at that. You literally are one of the very best at that. How long have we known each other now? Like 14?
Probably something like that. I think, well, I started my show in
2009,
2012. Yeah,
2009 or 10.
something like that. Yeah. I don't think I'd started my show yet when we got to know each other.
Uh-uh.
No. So
And
it's longer than 12 years for sure.
you and I have never, ever, ever lost contact.
Correct.
And it had zero to do with making money.
Right.
Although we both wanted to desperately make money.
Mm-hmm.
But it was because of like-minded people. And one of the things that you would do, I would go get busy, like almost every entrepreneur I know. I'd go get busy over here, and then all of a sudden I'd wake up and here's Brian. Hey man, I prayed for you this morning. I'm thinking about Spencer. I love you. I hope you have an amazing day. You rock, blah, 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 blah. And I'd just be like, wow, this guy's taking the time to make me important in his life. And I think it's a beautiful skill set, because I don't believe that you're doing it because you want anything from it. I
Not at
believe that it's
all.
just who you are. And
Mhm.
what it does, I'm telling you from the other side, you made me more like you.
Good.
I became more aware. I
Yeah.
started doing that with you and with other people because of how I knew how it made me feel. And so to watch that flame
Mhm.
get passed around
Mhm.
person to person to person, it's a labor of love and it's a
Mhm.
labor of joy. It's not a labor of what I'm going to get from it, because it's
Right.
just being a quality human being. I've always appreciated you for that, man. Always appreciated you for that.
I'm so
Because
glad to hear
you
that.
did it when you had success. You did it when you were at rock bottom, and you can talk about that or not talk about it, doesn't matter, but you had a rock bottom.
Mhm.
You had to go back and do the W-2 thing after you started your business. Then you clawed your way out of that and said, no, I will do this.
Mhm.
You remained consistently Brian K. Wright
Mhm.
the entire time. And that's a level of maturity that I really would love to impart on a lot of people, because I don't see it as much in,
Yeah.
especially in our space, the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial space.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot more. I think it's very good people, but I think they have bad habits because they're living in desperation. That's my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, and that's a really important lesson too, because when you and you and I have had this conversation before, because there have been plenty of times in my life where I've operated out of need instead of want. And when you operate out of need, you choose things that you would never choose if you felt like you had a free choice. You're choosing out of need because you're thinking about surviving and not thriving. I've taken on horrible roommates because I've
Mhm.
operated out of need. Oh my God. And I won't even go into it, but
I want to
yeah,
hear that story again.
there's one in particular who was very Sheldon-esque, and I hated every moment of it. Every moment of it. I couldn't wait for him to leave. But yeah, when you make choices because you think you need something, it's so disempowering, and you just feel utterly hopeless, and you just want it to get better, but you don't know how. And I've had many rock bottom moments, and you've had a few yourself,
Mhm.
but I always firmly believe that the pendulum swings both ways. If it's this bad, it won't always be this bad. If it's this good, it probably won't always be this good. So reap the harvest from that season as quickly and as much as you can, because it may not always be like this. And when you do experience a bottom, think about what skills can you use? How can you help and serve other people? And if you look for something, you'll find it. If you're looking for a way to generate more income, you'll find it. You'll be introduced to people. In fact, it's life can be so serendipitous sometimes. Sometimes I'll be thinking about something in particular, and all of a sudden God shows it to me. Even that very same day, it's like, oh, well, there it is.
I believe that it's a muscle that you
Yeah.
can build.
Hmm.
Um, I'm at a stage in my development um, where I will literally think about something, and as soon as I energetically magnetize toward it, people
Yeah.
and things start showing up in my life. That opportunity starts manifesting itself, and I literally step into it. And
Yeah.
what I've also found, I don't step into it anymore as if, oh my God, I've got to control it because I don't understand it. Because I dream big dreams now.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to not always dream big dreams the way I consider it now. Like I'm scared of like the things because it's like I have no skill set in this. But as these people and opportunities show up, I literally go, by the way, I'm completely clueless. I am open to learning. This is what I can offer, and I will be an exceptional student. And what I have found is that people love helping you when you actually actively listen to them and then apply what they are teaching you to do. And now I don't have to be an imposter.
Right.
Now I don't have to pretend. I can literally just be Chris, and that is good enough. And when we do our events, we do events now every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I tell people in the kindest way that I know how, but I don't really care what you think about me. And to some people that comes off a little bit aggressive or a little bit ostentatious or a little bit cocky.
Yeah.
But what I am doing is repeating to people over and over again, you do not care what I think about you. Say it with me. I don't care what you think, because when I stop caring what you think about me, I start just being who I truly am. And dude, it took me too many years for me to become who I really am. And I don't mourn the loss. I enjoyed the journey. And I'm grateful I didn't lop off arms and stuff in the process. But I want other people to get there quicker, because we're living in a day where I think people truly value vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's coming out when people aren't doing that. And what's happening is this super polarization is going on, and grace is not really being given anymore.
Right. And
What's your experience with that?
Thank you. And I think the whole idea of being vulnerable, I think some people maybe take it a little too far. I mean, if you're being vulnerable, there's got to be a reason for it. That does not mean you can air your dirty laundry for attention. That's not what you're talking about. And lots of people do that.
Yes.
I only share the rock bottom after I've gotten out of it, so that I can say, this is what I did.
A friend of mine said, share from the scar, not the wound.
That's a great point.
That's basically what you're saying. Like, don't, if you don't have a solution, all you're doing is asking for free therapy. And I promise you, you will get it, and you probably don't want it.
Yeah. In fact, I've got a friend that I talk to every day on social media, and there's, the whole idea about not announcing your moves in advance. And I coined a word, stud foo, and we both laugh about it. In fact, he made me a t-shirt and sent it to me for Christmas a couple of years ago that says, I know stud foo. Well, what is that? It's, well, basically you're doing amazing and awesome things in a stealth and ninja kind of way. In other words, you're not announcing what you're doing until you've done it. So that's what stud foo is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I think, what's your take? I mean, you've been on social media as long as I have. What have you seen evolve from the beginning until now?
Well, when I resisted Facebook for a long time, because I just didn't want to do that. But, well, gosh, when I joined Facebook, it was all about Farmville and games and cat pictures and people inviting me to play the games. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Just stop it. But now, and yes, I mean, one thing that's really, really cool is a lot of my Facebook friends they have faith, and they'll share their Bible verses. They'll share the stories. They'll share that journey, which I love. And then there's people in the entrepreneur world who seem so concerned about flexing what they're doing, and they don't really tell you when they're failing until it happens so long ago that no one cares anymore. But yeah, I think you have to be really judicious about who you listen to, because sometimes the people that pose with their cars or their jets, and they're rented, by the way, or they're borrowed most of the time, but then they complain about paying $1,000 invoice. Which version of your story is true? The one that has the cars and the jets, or the one that really is broke? So you just have to be really, really careful about who you listen to. And I almost never will give attention to a cold pitch, because you and I are both very well connected in the entrepreneurial world. If you're pitching me something that 10 other people in my network do really, really well, wouldn't I work with one of them before I work with a total stranger? Probably.
Right.
Probably. I mean, I'm connected to a lot of fitness trainers online. In fact, I helped with a Fit Pro collaborative book about a year ago. And so I have a lot of people. So when a new fitness trainer or someone new to me, friend requests me and then start messaging me, what are your top 3 fitness goals? None of your damn business. Thank you. I don't say it, but I know in the back of my mind, there's a pitch coming. And sometimes I'll just flat out say, please don't pitch me. I have at least a dozen people in my network who do what you do. Why you?
I actually, so I get pitched a lot too. I've got 20 or 30,000 people following me on Instagram, got, 5 or 10K on Facebook. And I don't really take friend requests anymore, even when we have 200 friends in common. I've got thousands of friend requests on Facebook, and I'm hovering around 3,000 people. Once you join my network, I'll accept your friend request.
Of course.
But on the other end, I'm always interested to see what people are doing in marketing.
Yeah.
And so when somebody says or does it, not in the lamest way, like, what are your 3 fitness goals?
Yeah.
And it's all personality based. Like I'm a bullet point kind of guy. So it's like, get to your damn point. Like if you're pitching me, let me know that's what you're doing so I can willingly enter this conversation. Because I think that's the part that offends you. It's like they don't really care what your 3 fitness goals are. They just want you to respond,
right?
So that they can pitch you. But if somebody is willing to say, hey, I see that you're on podcast number 60 or blah, 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 blah. I'm actually, I've helped these kinds of people do it. Would you be interested in a phone call? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I'll say not right now. Thank you very much. And I'll go on. 6 months later, if I am, I'll come back to that person and say, now I'm willing to have you pitch me because I'm interested in that. And it's the only people that I get offended at are the people that ask the same questions after I've already answered them. And they will come back 3 months later. And it's like, no, that's not how I've ever done business. If I reach out to you, I'm going to remember or put in my CRM or write a note or put it in my phone that, hey, I had this conversation. We talked about this. This is his dog's name, da, 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 da. So at least I start the conversation the next time saying something new.
Yeah.
Not, I'm pitching 1,000 people a day for 2 to say yes. That whole, and you did cold calling for a while.
A little bit.
So it's not like, and I'm talking about you did it as an employee.
As an employee,
but it works.
It does. It does. You have to have a very thick skin, but yes.
But it's not the ideal way to build rapport.
No.
And my imagination might be running wild, but I would think most of the people that would say yes to things like that are not your ideal client anyway, which means you're most likely not the ideal vendor.
Yeah.
For the result you're proposing, because my experience, and I paid north of 6 figures to online marketers and other stuff to kind of learn. 90% of them can't get you anywhere close to the result that they talked about from the beginning. And 6 months later, it always turns around that it's something I did wrong or just stop.
Yeah.
I can't afford the $4,000 a month anymore. It's not working. I'll go back. So that's why I started building organically.
Yeah. And when people talk to me about, I can grow your reach, and I look at their profiles, it's like, my following is bigger than yours. How are you? How?
Have you seen that meme? It's the guy that makes the funny comments. He's like an Indian fellow, and it's like the guy has the book on how to make a lot of money, and then the question underneath is, I need money in order to start my venture. And then the guy writes back in a message thread, you should read your book.
Yeah.
It's that kind of
Xavier
stuff.
is his name or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious because a lot of people do trip over themselves, and it's just young entrepreneurs, and that's fine. but that's why I hide myself behind paywalls. It's why I hide myself in special groups. And it's why I teach what I teach, because it actually, I mean, dude, I've been at this 26 years as a business owner, like more than half my life. I've done a lot of stuff wrong. The handful of things that I've done right work consistently. And that's all I've ever wanted to learn is like, what can we scale?
Yeah.
And then you've done the exact same thing. Like, you've always actually been a little bit more critical than me, because I think you've been in that side of the industry and you're like, oh, I know exactly what this is, and I'm not letting people waste my time.
Yeah. It's like my antennas are way up. Just don't even try to mess with me. Okay. Yeah.
Tell me, just so people can, it's funny. Tell me the worst memory that you have, because you were cold calling for a nonprofit. Is that correct?
I worked in an organization, a call center that called for a lot of different nonprofits. I loved calling for St. Jude. That was always a feel good, usually a feel good. Yeah. And in December, we always got a lot of donations because people were looking, for Christmas donations.
Yeah.
The worst ones, the political ones were the worst. The political ones were the worst. I mean, calling.
What do you mean? Like
money,
how?
Well, when you're calling to raise money for the Republican National Committee, for example, I'm not giving you money unless so-and-so is the nominee for president. I'm not giving you money unless so-and-so steps down as the chairperson of the RNC. I'm not stepping down until you get this border problem fixed. I have nothing to do with any of that.
Right.
You're mad at me. Not me, but I mean, yeah, but you're representing them. I'm like, I can't fix any of the things that you're talking about. And so that was frustrating. And there were some organizations that were just really, really tough to raise money for. Now, I loved raising money for Habitat for Humanity. People were usually pretty open to that. But the political ones were just the worst, because now, even more now than ever, I mean, the political climate is just so divisive.
Oh my goodness.
You are either on one. If you say you're neutral, you are lying. You're not.
I avoid the conversation at all costs, because I don't want to talk about it.
I don't either. I mean, I believe what I believe, and you'll never change my mind. But yeah, and I try to keep that out of business as much as I can. But yeah, that's why I don't usually let political candidates come on my show, because I'm not doing it.
Yeah. So we sold an edition, or I sold an edition last month. And I was sitting down with the homeowner, the wife. The husband was off doing something, and she had her sister there. And she started talking about one particular candidate that's coming up. Her sister believes in the other. And I could literally tell by the way they were dressed which way they leaned. Right. And the conversation was getting so uncomfortable, bro, because it's like, I don't want to lose the sale over, like, I'm just trying to navigate my way through this whole conversation to go, yeah, that's not why I'm here. But to think that even inside of families, people are that polarized.
Oh yeah.
Over politics.
Yeah. What really blows my mind is marriages where one spouse believes one and the other spouse believes the opposite. I mean, when I was growing up, the pastor of my church leaned one way and his wife leaned the other. I'm like, I don't know how you all did this.
My dad and my stepmom were like that forever.
Wow.
And so dad was a very strong conservative. My stepmom was a school teacher, so she was much more liberal. And I don't know how they did it. It was painful for me to sometimes listen to one side's conversation and the other just chose to keep quiet, is kind of what happened.
Yeah. Just because
they've been married 40 years, so they figured it out.
Yeah. Just because I don't speak up doesn't mean I agree with you.
Yeah, and everybody needs to know you're a Taurus anyway, so it's like you're not moving you unless you want to be moved.
Exactly.
I tried to make you get a non-flip phone for like, I don't know, 6 years.
Yeah.
You're like, nope, I'm happy. I'll get the QWERTY keyboard phone.
You'll be happy to know I did this a couple
years
ago.
You did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, Brian, I've sold millions of dollars on this stupid thing. It'll pay for itself. You're like, I don't care. I don't want it. Hey,
Yeah.
hey, now that you have it,
Yeah.
do you like it?
I do.
Okay, cool.
I do. Yes, I've learned to embrace scrolling.
Yes, that is like it can become the infomercial of hobbies late
And
at night.
I've learned how to check my text messages while I'm talking to someone on the phone, because lots of times when you're calling into a company and it's a customer service kind of call, they want to
Yeah.
verify that's you. So please verify the code that I just texted you in with my other phone. I'm sorry, I can't do this without hanging up on you. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. Email it to me.
You know, I've started and it's been 3 years that I've done this. It started out differently. I was talking to clients or prospects at night because that's when they were off work. But
Yeah.
Robin and the kids and I are hanging out, and she's like, you know, you need to stop. So I started putting my phone on do not disturb at 6 p.m.
Right.
And I've kept it that way. And I'm telling you, my life is better.
Yeah.
Because I don't do the mindless scroll until bedtime.
Yes.
Much, much better.
Yeah,
Much
for
more
sure.
present.
And I know you have that rule because family is important to you. So if I really need to talk to you, I'll just text you instead. And I know you'll answer me whenever you feel like it. And that's fine.
Yeah, and if it's an emergency, there's a button that you hit that says notify anyway. And what I do is every hour or half hour, or when it hits me, I'll just flip my phone over and make sure nothing. I mean, I do own a few businesses and things can go wrong. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I just look, and if no emergencies, cool, put it back down.
Yeah.
The first time I had to build that habit, though, it was a pain. Like I kept feeling me want to go grab that and open it up and, whoa, who's that notification and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I just didn't realize how much gamification was put into these social media platforms to like give you a little dopamine hit when you see something's going on.
You have to set boundaries. When I was teaching, I taught in college for about 5 years. I told my students on day one, I'm open to talking to you outside of class whenever you need to, but just not after 9 p.m.
Yeah.
I will not promise to honor anything I say to you after 9 p.m. So just don't.
It's fair.
So they knew. It's like, okay, if it's after 9 o'clock, I guess I'll just wait until I see Brian tomorrow at school. It's fine. But you have to set boundaries. It's like, no, do not call me after 9 p.m. I'm not kidding about this.
So let me ask you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap it up because I see we're just about at time.
Okay.
What are 3 pieces of your best foundational advice that you could give a human, not just a business person? Because we were talking earlier, you're getting ready to start another magazine.
Yeah.
And you've been heavily invested for the last decade toward business owners, right? What you're getting ready to do now is more of an op-ed and humanistic, like anybody can read it.
Yeah.
You've experienced a lot, talked to a lot of amazing humans. What are the top 3 lessons that you've learned in your life that you would share with anyone in order for them to have the most extraordinary life that they can?
Number 1 is a metaphor that Tony Robbins shared in one of his books, Awaken the Giant Within. Life is like a Jeopardy board. All the answers are there. The person who wins is the one who asks the right questions.
Okay.
So learn to ask better questions. You're not getting what you want because you're not asking the correct questions. It's very much like when you're trying to program a computer to do something. Well, it's only giving you what you put into it.
Yeah.
So if you're not coding it correctly, which I don't know coding, but if you're not giving the correct input, you're not going to get anything other than what you're putting into it. So all the answers exist. You just have to ask the right questions.
How do you learn how to ask the right questions before you give me number 2?
I think the questions have to be expansive and empowering. I would say ask, how can, not can I?
Okay.
Or, like, for example, if you say, I can't afford it, well, ask, how can you afford it?
Okay.
Well, that's going to cost me too much. Well, what's the cost of not doing this? That's a much better question. What if this doesn't work? Well, what if it does? How will your life change? How will things be different from you 12 months from now, 24 months from now, 60 months from now, if you did this? Because time's going to pass anyway. In fact, I posted this earlier today on Facebook. Time's going to pass. I mean, go after your goal. Time's going to pass whether you do it or not, so just do it.
Yep.
Number 2 would be don't give up. It's not quite as bad as you think it is. Just learn to enjoy the season that you're in, even if it's not pleasant, because there's a lesson to be learned, and you'll get the same lesson over and over again until you finally pass it, because life's like a video game. You have to master the level you're on now before you are allowed to access the next level. It's like Pac-Man. It's like Tetris. Yes, I'm going back a long ways with that Pac-Man reference, but I grew up playing that game in arcades. You cannot go past the first level until you figure out how to win at that level, and then you'll be given the more difficult level. Because now the next time you play the game, getting past level 1's pretty easy. It's like, okay, just fast forward to the next one. Okay, now I'm here. Now what do I do? Oh, the game's moving faster now. Oh, how do I die? It's very much like when you play football. When you are a quarterback in high school, you throw the ball and hope the receiver gets there. In college, you're throwing where the receiver is. In the pros, you're throwing to where the receiver's going.
Makes sense.
So the game moves a lot faster the more you move along. But yeah, don't give up. Just keep going. And what would number 3 be? There is a reason why you're here. There is a purpose for who you are and what you have to offer the world. And if you don't know what that is yet, you just haven't figured it out. In fact, I would say don't compare yourself to other people. Don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Because, I mean, when you and I met, I thought, oh my God, he's so much further ahead in this journey than I am. Well, he's just figured some things out before I did. And that's really the only difference.
Yeah,
you figured some things out before I
started earlier. I just started earlier. That's the only difference.
Yeah, you started earlier. I mean, you realized what you wanted in your life earlier than I did. And there's no crime in that. No. As long as you start. I mean, some of the most successful people in the world didn't. I mean, Colonel Sanders didn't start his chicken empire until he was retired. He saw his minuscule Social Security check and said, I'm not putting up with this. I need to find a better way.
Yeah, and he didn't have overnight success either.
No, he did not.
At 68 years old, he didn't have overnight success. He drove around in his car, did not have a lot of money, but he had a dream.
Yeah.
That's probably, to me, the other 2 I knew you were going to say because I just know you.
Yeah.
But learning to ask better questions and how to do it. What I heard you say is, how can I? That's moving towards something instead of avoidance. And at the end of the day, that's having an abundant mindset instead of having a lack mindset.
Yeah.
And that is something that I believe people are happy and people are chasing a feeling. They're not chasing things.
Yeah.
And when you're moving toward anything, you can be in a positive state of being.
Yeah.
Brian, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, always, man. And if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to find you?
You can go to briankwright.com. You can also check out the magazine at ultimateachieversmagazine.com. And if you want to book a call to talk to me, callwithbrian.com.
Callwithbrian.com. Everybody, we'll see you in the trenches. Take care.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Hey friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to catch future casts. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it so others can benefit from it as well. I'll see you in the trenches.